Okay, let's just start with this. What if I told you a 17-year-old girl lied to her mom about a school trip?
Something a lot of teens do, unfortunately, a pretty common thing.
Exactly. But then she drives 500 miles from Rochester, New York, all the way down to Myrtle Beach for spring break and is never seen alive again.
And that one decision, that, like you said, common act of teenage rebellion, it just completely spiraled. It turned into a 13-year mystery that consumed her mother's life and, honestly, baffled
So her
investigators.
last communication. It was just a simple text to her boyfriend, John Greco, just a photo from her hotel room, a totally normal, casual text. And then just silence.
Complete silence. Brittanee Drexel disappeared on April 25th, 2009 at around 8:45 p.m.
And for 13 years, her mom, Dawn, she searched. She never, ever gave up hope. And then a confession finally came.
A confession that just shattered everything. It revealed a truth that was so much darker than anyone, even in their worst fears, had really imagined.
This case went from a cold, frustrating missing persons file to this horrifying resolution. But the details of what actually happened and the years of wrong turns the investigation took, that's what we're exploring today.
Welcome to the deep dive.
The speed of it all is what's so shocking. How a simple lie from a teenager, a trip to the beach, could escalate so fast into just absolute terrifying silence.
It's the question at the heart of this. We've gone through all the court documents, the FBI reports, the victim impact statements, and all the technical data that finally cracked this case. Our mission here is to trace every single step of that weekend and analyze the long, painful road to some kind of accountability.
Before we really get into the timeline, and some of the details they're chilling.
Yeah.
We want to make sure you can stay with us through this whole story. It's complex, it's emotional.
That's right. So please subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker. That way you won't miss any of our upcoming work as we examine the true stories behind the headlines.
Okay, so let's begin. The story starts with a totally normal girl, Brittanee Drexel, 17 years old, living in chilly New York.
It's April 2009, spring break. And like so many kids her age, she desperately wanted to go south to join everyone else on the beach.
But her mom, Dawn, she had a really bad feeling about this trip to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
A very bad feeling. The sources we have are clear that Dawn explicitly told her no. She refused permission. And her reasons were, they were solid parenting reasons.
She didn't know the friends Brittanee was planning to go with, for one.
Right. And maybe even more importantly, there was no adult supervision plan for this 500-mile road trip and the week at the beach. That's a huge red flag for any parent.
But it was more than just that, wasn't it? The source material suggests Dawn felt this almost physical sense of dread, a premonition that something terrible was going to happen if Brittanee went on that trip.
And despite all that, her mother's refusal, that clear unease Brittanee left on April 22nd anyway. She did the classic thing. She lied, said she was just staying with a friend nearby.
Dawn thought she meant somewhere local, right? Like along Lake Ontario.
Exactly. The weather in Rochester was actually pretty warm that day, so it seemed plausible. But instead, Brittanee was in a car heading straight for the Grand Strand of South Carolina.
And this is where the vulnerability starts almost the second she gets there. She was traveling with two couples, other students.
Yeah, and the dynamic was just off. The FBI reports, and what the friends later said, reveal that Brittanee felt isolated almost immediately. She was the odd one out.
The dreaded fifth wheel.
The notorious fifth wheel. She wasn't really part of their group. And that feeling of being an outsider, it pushed her to try and find other people to connect with.
Which makes total sense. So she started reaching out to other friends, longtime friends from back home in Rochester, who she knew were also in Myrtle Beach.
And that's what leads us to the final, fatal sequence of events on Saturday, April 25th. She was staying at the Bar Harbor Hotel, not officially registered, but as a friend of a guest. Around 8:00 p.m., she leaves that hotel. She walks about 1.5 miles south, down Ocean Boulevard to the Blue Water Resort. That's where she was going to visit one of those old friends from home.
She didn't stay there very long, though. And the reason she left is it's agonizingly trivial.
It's a petty teenage argument. A friend from her original group at the Bar Harbor started texting her, demanding that she bring back a pair of black shorts she'd borrowed.
Immediately.
And this stupid, mundane argument, it becomes the trigger for everything. Brittanee felt pressured to get back quickly.
So around 8:45 p.m., she leaves the safety of her friend's room at the Blue Water Resort.
And she starts to walk back alone, Security cameras at the resort caught her leaving. She's walking alone, southbound.
And we know what she was wearing, a black and white tank top, flip-flops, shorts, and she had a beige purse. She was alone, on a busy street, yes, but still alone at night.
You can see in the footage she's on her phone,
Mm-hmm.
and her last confirmed outgoing communication was to her boyfriend, John Greco, who was back in New York.
And the records on this are, well, they pinpoint the moment she disappears, pretty much down to the minute.
They do. There was some initial very slight discrepancy. One record showed her last outgoing text at 8:57 p.m. Another piece of data, maybe the last tower ping she generated, put it closer to 9:55 p.m.
But the point is, within just minutes of 9 p.m., all communication just stops.
It's not a fade. It's an instantaneous cutoff, like a switch being flipped.
And her boyfriend, John, he knew something was wrong right away.
He did. He tried calling, texting over and over. When he got nothing, he called her mom, Dawn. And that's when Dawn had to face this double horror, realizing her daughter had lied and that now she was missing 500 miles away.
The shock of that, the betrayal, and then the fear, but what is just? It's maddening is what her friends did, or rather what they didn't do.
They left.
They packed up their car and drove all the way back to Rochester.
Without reporting her missing. Dawn, from New York, was the one who had to file the official missing person report with the Myrtle Beach police.
I can't wrap my head around that. How do you leave someone behind?
It speaks volumes about their character, or lack of it. They abandoned her. So Dawn, who hours before didn't even know her daughter was in South Carolina, she becomes the driving force behind the entire investigation.
Her determination was just immediate.
Absolutely. She drove straight down to Myrtle Beach. And eventually she moved there permanently just to be close to the investigation, to push them to keep Brittanee's face in front of them.
And she suspected human trafficking from the very beginning.
She did. It was a concern the police sort of downplayed at first. But tragically, given that Horry County has been cited as a high-risk area for trafficking, her maternal instincts were frighteningly on point.
So the police finally get the report, and they go to her room at the Bar Harbor Hotel. What did they find?
They found the first concrete piece of evidence. All of her clothes, everything she'd packed was still in the room.
But her purse and her cell phone were gone.
Exactly. And that told them right away this wasn't a case of a teenager running off. She left for what she thought was a short walk and was intercepted. Her essential items were gone.
So the whole mystery, the key to finding her, was in that missing phone.
It was the only lead they had. Investigators were able to track the network pings from incoming messages her phone was receiving after her last text went out. And the data told a terrifying story.
What did it show?
At first, the pings were consistent with her walking speed, right there at the south end of Myrtle Beach where she was last seen. But then, shortly after that 9:00 p.m. cutoff, the signal suddenly starts moving much, much faster.
That's the moment.
That's the moment of abduction, captured in cell tower data. The phone accelerated, pinging about 15 miles south, moving at vehicle speed. They calculated it at around 55 miles per hour.
She was in a car, forced into a car.
It's the only explanation. And you have to remember, this is 2009. We didn't have the kind of granular GPS data we have today. They were using cell tower triangulation, which is, it's about measuring signal delays from multiple towers to estimate speed and direction. But that sudden jump in speed was undeniable.
And the car wasn't staying in the busy, populated tourist area.
No, it kept traveling south, further and further away from Myrtle Beach, away from safety.
Where did it finally stop?
The last decisive ping was recorded about 50 to 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach. It was near the Georgetown-Charleston County line, off a tower near the North Santee River. And then early the next morning, April 26th, it just stopped.
It went dead.
Completely dead. And that final ping gave them a destination.
The Pole Yard boat landing.
Yes. A remote, rural, swampy, and incredibly isolated area deep inside Georgetown County, 46 miles from where she was taken.
A place no tourist would ever go.
A place no 17-year-old girl on spring break would ever go willingly, especially late at night. The investigators knew it immediately. This was the crime scene. This wasn't a runaway case. This was an abduction that had ended in a very, very bad place.
So the FBI later formalized this, right? They called the abduction site Point A and the final signal Point B.
They did. Point A was Ocean Boulevard. Point B was Pole Yard Landing. That became the cornerstone of their investigation for years. The geography of the crime.
And they had video, too. They could see her walking south from the Blue Water Resort.
But they never, ever saw her on any camera walking back north. She vanished in that 1.5-mile strip of road, snatched by whoever was in that vehicle that sped south.
And this is where the case just plays. It hits a wall for years, a period of cold leads, false hope, and one of the most damaging, wrongful accusations I've ever seen in a case like this.
It's a really frustrating part of the story. And look, before we get into that, this is a good moment to remind everyone. Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, all the major platforms. Like, share, and comment on this story. It really helps us reach more people who need to hear what happened to Brittanee.
So for 7 years, Dawn Drexel just refuses to let this case go cold. She is a constant presence, a constant voice for her daughter, but solid evidence, it just wasn't there.
It wasn't. And then, in 2016, the FBI decides to hold a news conference.
Yeah.
I think they were hoping to shake something loose, generate new leads. But what they did instead was, well, it sent the investigation dramatically off course.
This is when they publicly declared that they believed Brittanee was murdered.
Yes. They formally stated their belief that she was abducted from Myrtle Beach, taken to the Georgetown area where the phone died, and killed shortly after she disappeared. They put up a $25,000 reward.
And the entire basis for this huge public announcement, this definitive statement, it was the word of one person.
A deeply problematic person. A jailhouse informant named Taquan Brown. And the story he told was just monstrous. It drove the entire media narrative for years.
What did he claim?
Brown claimed that 2 days after Brittanee vanished, he was at a stash house in a town called McClellanville, and he witnessed her being sexually assaulted by a group of 8 to 12 young men.
A gang rape.
A gang rape. He said he saw her try to run away, saw her get caught, pistol whipped by the main suspect, and then he heard 2 gunshots. He assumed she'd been killed right then and there.
That's horrifying. But he added another detail, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah.
To make it even more graphic, he claimed he saw her body, wrapped up, being taken out and dumped into a local alligator pond.
I mean, how could you not follow up on a lead like that?
You have to. But this is where the investigation should have pumped the brakes, because the source material is explicit about how wildly inconsistent Brown's story was.
How so?
Well, first off, the credibility of any jailhouse informant is questionable, right? They're often looking for a deal. But in Brown's case, his story kept changing. Later, he claimed Brittanee was murdered weeks after her disappearance, at a totally different location, by a different guy he called Nate. The killer, the timeline, the location, it all shifted.
But despite those massive red flags, those glaring inconsistencies, the FBI ran with it. They focused on one person from his initial story.
They did. They zeroed in on a young man named Timothy Deshaun Taylor.
Who was only 16 years old when Brittanee disappeared in 2009.
16. And what the records show is a classic case of law enforcement leaning on someone. The FBI used unrelated federal charges that Taylor was facing from a McDonald's armed robbery in 2011 to pressure him.
They were trying to squeeze him for information or a confession.
Exactly. And because of this pressure, because of the FBI's public statements, Timothy Taylor became the prime suspect in the public's mind. He was never charged with her murder, but the damage was done.
And he always said he was innocent.
Vehemently. And he had an alibi for the specific time Brown claimed the assault happened. He was in class at Lincoln High School.
His lawyer said they were just bullying him.
That's right. The attorney said the FBI was using the robbery charge as leverage to try and force a false confession on a case he had nothing to do with.
And the consequences for him and his family were just catastrophic.
They were. His mother, Joan Taylor, spoke about it. She said it caused irreparable harm, that the relentless pursuit by law enforcement and the media traumatized them. She lost her job of 11 years because of it.
They were getting death threats.
Constant death threats.
Yeah.
The family called it a media lynching. It's just a chilling example of what happens when an investigation puts a name out there based on such dubious, flimsy evidence.
So why? Why did the FBI rely so heavily on this one? Clearly unreliable informant.
I think it was probably a combination of things. There was immense public pressure to solve this case, and they had run out of good leads. They needed a breakthrough.
And Taquan Brown gave them a story.
He gave them a story that fit their geographic theory. It happened down the Georgetown area near Point B. And it seems like the desperate need for an answer, any answer, overrode the need for it to be the right answer.
So this tunnel vision, focusing everything on Timothy Taylor for years, it let the real killer walk free.
That's the tragedy of it. While the FBI was chasing this bizarre story about a stash house in alligator ponds, the man who actually killed Brittanee, who had already been briefly looked at and dismissed, was just living his life. The cost of that mistake is measured in years of pain for two families.
It is just infuriating. Okay, before we get to the breakthrough that finally brought the real truth to light, let's just take a quick moment here.
Yeah, Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive on YouTube and follow us on all the podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Spreaker. We need your help to get this story to more listeners, so please like, share, and comment on the episode.
Okay, so after years of being sidetracked, the investigation finally gets a fresh set of eyes.
It does. A new FBI team comes on, and they're really being pushed by Dawn Drexel, who just never, ever let up. And they make a critical decision.
What was that?
They decided to basically throw out the informant's narrative and focus strictly on the science, on the hard data they had from day one.
Back to point A and point B?
Exactly. Back to the cell phone data. Their mission was simple. Scientifically identify the vehicle that was moving south during a precise 5-minute window when Brittanee's phone went from walking speed to car speed.
Between 8:58 p.m. and 9:03 p.m. on April 25th, 2009.
That was the window. So they pulled all the traffic camera footage from near 11th Avenue South during that time. And this was not easy.
The footage from 2009 must have been terrible.
Incredibly grainy, dark, blurry. They had to use forensic video enhancement technology that just wasn't as advanced, or at least wasn't used back in '09. They spent months on it.
They weren't just looking for a car, were they? They were looking for a specific car.
A very specific car. They meticulously analyzed every vehicle, trying to identify make, model, year, any unique features. And after months of this painstaking work, they found it.
They identified a single vehicle.
A single vehicle that passed at the exact right time. And that car led them to a name. Raymond Moody.
And who is Raymond Moody?
A 62-year-old resident of Georgetown, South Carolina. And here's the really chilling part.
He was a registered sex offender.
Yes. And he had already been a person of interest in this case back in 2012. The initial investigators had looked at him because of his record and his proximity, but he was quickly discounted and they moved on.
His history. Tell me about his history.
It's bad. He'd served 21 years of a 40-year sentence in California for raping and brutally beating an 8-year-old girl in 1983.
My God.
He was released on parole in 2004, so he'd been out for 5 years when Brittanee went missing. A convicted, violent sexual predator living right there in Georgetown County.
So the new team has their guy, and this time it's based on science, not a story.
Right. And now they needed irrefutable proof. So in April of 2022, they approached Moody's longtime girlfriend, a woman named Angel Voss.
And she agreed to cooperate.
She did. Whether it was her conscience or just fear, she agreed to wear a wire.
So the pressure is building on Moody.
It mounts very quickly. In May 2022, the police are executing a search warrant at his house. Moody sees them. He understands they have evidence, the video, the cell data, probably the conversations from the wire. He knew it was over.
And he confessed?
He confessed to his attorney. He admitted everything. That he kidnapped, raped, and murdered Brittanee Drexel on the night she disappeared.
And in that confession, he finally told them where she was.
Yes. He gave them the exact location where he had buried her body 13 years earlier.
So investigators go to this rural wooded area in Georgetown County.
It's off a gated private drive. They brought in excavation equipment, and they found human remains buried about 4 feet deep. The site was about 33 miles from Myrtle Beach, right in the area they suspected all along.
And on May 15th, 2022, they got the confirmation.
Dental records confirmed it. The remains belonged to Brittanee Drexel. After 13 years and 20 days, she had finally been found.
So they have Moody's confession, they found Brittanee's remains. It seems like the case is closed. But the true horror of it, the details were still to come out.
That's right. The full, chilling depth of the crime wasn't yet public. The information that came out of Moody's post-confession interviews is just. It's crucial to understanding what really happened.
This is where his girlfriend, Angel Voss, comes back into the picture in a much darker way.
In a profoundly darker way. In November 2024, Moody gave another interview to the FBI from prison. And he revealed a shocking level of planning and complicity from Angel Voss.
She wasn't just a bystander who knew something.
Far from it. Moody claimed the abduction wasn't spontaneous. He said that he and Voss were actively hunting for a victim that night.
Hunting, that word, it changes everything.
It reframes the entire crime. It wasn't an opportunistic predator. It was a planned excursion. Moody even alleged that Voss had texted him the night before, specifically asking to go hunting.
Why?
Because, he claimed, she had always fantasized about snatching some girl. The picture it paints is of Voss having this dark fantasy that Moody then decided to help her carry out.
So Voss was instrumental in the actual abduction.
Absolutely critical. Moody said they used a calculated tactic. They pretended to be lost tourists, pulled over, asked Brittanee for directions, and then offered her a ride back to her hotel.
And for Brittanee, who was alone, probably upset about the argument over the shorts, an older couple offering a ride would seem harmless.
It would drop her guard completely. But as soon as she got in the car, Moody restrained her in the back seat, and Angel Voss got behind the wheel and drove them away.
Did he say what he told her?
He claimed he immediately lied to her, told her he was kidnapping her for a $5,000 ransom, maybe to try and keep her calm and compliant during the drive.
And the details of what happened at the Polyard boat landing. They're just horrific. Voss was there.
Moody claimed Voss was present in the tent during the sexual assault. He even said that at one point she left, drove back to their apartment to get keys and sex toys.
And he said she told him not to rape Brittanee until she got back.
That's what he claimed. Which, if true, confirms her active, willing participation. It shows a level of depravity that goes so far beyond just being an accomplice.
And the murder itself.
Moody confessed he strangled Brittanee with a yellow nylon rope. He said he then choked her again to make sure she was dead, and then stabbed her in the heart with an ice pick. The sources note that Moody had scratches on his face, which indicates Brittanee fought for her life.
She fought back.
She fought back hard. Moody said Voss was there during the killing, but he didn't recall her physically participating in the murder itself. But her involvement up to that point is undeniable.
And then the cover-up started.
He hid her body, lied to Voss, and told her Brittanee's friends had come and picked her up. Then he buried her later while Voss was asleep.
And for 13 years, Voss kept this secret. She actively lied to the FBI.
She did. She initially told them Brittanee got in the car willingly to do drugs, a lie she maintained for over a decade.
She eventually pleaded guilty, though.
In September 2024, she pleaded guilty to 3 counts of lying to the FBI. She was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison.
And prosecutors made a really key point about her role.
They did. They argued that her specific action of taking Brittanee's cell phone when she left the landing, that single act stripped Brittanee of her only chance of survival. She made sure no one could track or call for help. She sealed her fate.
So with Moody's confession, the criminal court case moved pretty quickly.
Very quickly. In October 2022, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole, plus another 60 years. Pleading guilty meant Dawn and the Drexel family didn't have to endure a trial.
And Moody said in court he was a monster.
He did, but the real power of that day was in the victim impact statements. Dawn Conley addressed him directly in court.
Her statement was incredible.
She called him a disgrace to your parents, to your own children. You were a serial rapist and a child predator. It was just a raw, powerful condemnation of everything he had done and everything he had stolen.
But the fight wasn't over. Dawn then pursued a civil lawsuit against him.
Right, and this wasn't really about the money. It was a necessary legal step for full accountability.
Why was that?
The lawsuit allowed her to seize any property Moody might have inherited to make sure his family couldn't benefit from any assets while he was in prison. It was symbolic, but it was important.
And she testified in that trial about the toll this all took on her.
She did. She was diagnosed with severe PTSD, anxiety, things that made it almost impossible for her to work. The financial and emotional cost of 13 years of searching was just immeasurable.
Moody offered no defense.
None. He said he was completely guilty and had no defense for my behavior.
And the jury came back with a massive verdict.
$700 million. It's symbolic, obviously. He doesn't have that kind of money. But her lawyer said the verdict was a statement against all predators, a valuation of the pain he caused.
Her lawyer even said the value of the property they hoped to seize wouldn't even cover Dawn's travel expenses over the years.
It just shows how much she sacrificed, how much she poured into finding her daughter.
And while the Drexel family finally had their justice, another family got a different kind of relief.
That's right. Moody's confession completely, unequivocally cleared the name of Timothy Taylor.
And the Taylor family found out he was cleared from the media, not from law enforcement.
A final, terrible failure in communication. His family publicly demanded that authorities clear his name, issue a formal statement of his innocence. They talked about the devastation, the years stolen from them by the false accusation.
It just raises that question again. How does the system fail so badly? How do you focus on a teenager with an alibi while a known, convicted predator walks free?
The case was only solved when the new team went back to the science, the objective data, the cell pings, the video timestamp. That's what led them to the right man, not the sensational, unreliable story.
And Dawn Conley, even in her own grief, she expressed compassion for the Taylor family.
She did. She said that while Moody being locked up means her family has justice, she knows that in a situation like this, nobody wins.
She also said that even with the answers, it's not over for her, that some of the answers have raised more questions.
Which is completely understandable. She still has to live with the finality of it all and the cost. The time she lost with her other children, Marissa and Camden, who also suffered through those 13 years.
So we've come through this story of just a terrifying intersection of teenage rebellion, a mother's unbelievable love, the power of technology, and just pure calculated evil.
And the resolution really came down to a few key things. Brittanee's vulnerability, alone on spring break, the scientific breakthrough linking that car to Raymond Moody, and the horrifying planned involvement of Angel Voss in hunting and luring her.
It's all about these agonizing contrasts, isn't it? The horror of what Brittanee went through fighting for her life versus the profound, heartbreaking relief Dawn felt just to bring her daughter's body home.
I think the true legacy of this case, beyond the personal tragedy, is what it reveals about systemic failure. The focus on Timothy Taylor not only destroyed an innocent family's peace for years, it allowed the real monster, serial rapist already in the system, to remain free. The chase for a quick, sensational answer almost destroyed two families.
It really makes you think about how we consume information in these big cases. Moody's confession finally brought the truth for Brittanee. But this case will always be this stark reminder that we have to demand rigorous, scientific investigation over these sensational, unverified stories from compromised sources.
Because the human cost when the system gets it wrong is just devastating. Don't forget to subscribe to The Deep Dive on YouTube and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Spreaker, and all the major podcast platforms. Like, share, and comment on this episode. Help us make sure Brittanee's story is heard and that we continue to demand accountability in these cold cases.